Yes, I'm Gita Ljubicic. You've seen me this morning. You've already heard a little bit about our project that we're doing. So now, I'm the first in a series of 3 presentations in this session this afternoon from my amazing team. So broadly, our project focuses on learning about Inuit uses and needs for weather, water, ice, and climate information, so WWIC that you've been hearing about. And this is specifically in Nunavut in Canada, which I showed you that map this morning of Inuit Nunangat. For this project, I'm leading it along with Natalie Carter, who's here, and Shirley Tagalik of the WWWIC Society in Nunavut, in Arviat, Nunavut. So in my presentation, I'm going to talk about the project as a whole, give you an overview of our results so far. Natalie will follow, talk a little bit about our research process, and then Jason Carpenter, one of our local research coordinators and a master's student on the project, will follow after that with some specific results from Iqaluit in Nunavut. So you can imagine some beautiful slides here of people on sea ice and traveling, and when we get them up, you'll see a few. But just some background is that our team of northern and southern researchers have been working together for many years, and we've been hearing over the years that increased variability of environmental conditions, especially sea ice conditions, and increasing storminess and unpredictability of winds and weather associated with those winds have been creating challenges for travel safety on the land. So when we say land in these presentations, it includes water and ice. It's all encompassing. So we've also heard a lot about people are using all different kinds of weather, water, and ice information to make decisions about safe travel. They're using their own experiences, but they're also checking all sorts of different available products online. You heard a little bit about that this morning from Natasha and Andrew. At the same time, they're highlighting that many of those available services are not quite meeting their needs in terms of the usability, accuracy, everything that Jean just showed from ship captains is very similar from community perspectives, although they're looking for different kinds of information related. But also just, the accessibility, the ease of interpretation, and mostly it's the relevance to the local use scale. So the region that people are traveling in and the time scales, which is usually in the matter of hours, as real time as possible is what people are looking for. So we decided as a team that have been working with many different communities in Nunavut to come together in a coordinated approach to community-based research and to develop a survey to understand and to document what are the needs. We've heard about them, we know a lot of them, but we needed that documentation to really be able to show various service providers, what those priorities are, and to hopefully inform some of those tailored services in the future. So we developed this survey to get a wide range of feedback from youth, from men, from women of all different ages and levels of experience with traveling in Nunavut. Briefly, we had a very collaborative survey development process. So we started out in March 2019 with one version of survey questions, and after multiple iterations with service providers, with Northern and Inuit organizations and governments, with our research team, 4 iterations later, by October 2019, we had a version that we could submit to research ethics. So it was a very iterative process, and most critical in that was our local research coordinators who gave a lot of feedback about how to make the questions relevant and how to make sure that the responses we're getting would really inform based on community needs. We also did a first collaborative analysis workshop in Arviat this past October 2021, where we brought together local research coordinators to start analyzing the results of the survey. So this is a map of Nunavut with 8 communities around Nunavut. So the 8 communities are Pond Inlet, which we learned about this morning, Clyde River, Iqaluit, Coral Harbor, Sanikiluaq, Joe Haven, Cambridge Bay, and Arviat. So they're in all 3 regions of Nunavut. We have 18 local research coordinators working in those 8 communities, facilitating surveys in their home communities, and all of this was pretty much done over the COVID time, so that's the only way that it was even possible. There is a map. Thank you, perfect timing. So that was the only way that we were able to do this kind of project. I mean, even without COVID, this was the only way that we felt was appropriate and that would be most relevant, but certainly with COVID, that meant it was possible to continue. So there you can see the distribution of all those communities that I just mentioned. Let's see if that works. Wonderful. So this is just an overview of survey responses. So we have, from those 8 communities, 336 people responded to these survey questions. There's a whole range of age groups, which is what we were hoping for. And predominantly in that 40 to 49-year-old range are really active hunters and harvesters on the land. 68% of them were male, 32% female. Very high percentage are identifying as Indigenous peoples, and predominantly of those, 92% identify as Inuit. Just give me a heads up on timing whenever we get there. So a very quick overview here, because Jason will talk more about these things specific to Iqaluit, so you'll get more details. But these are the most commonly highlighted environmental conditions that Inuit in these 8 communities were looking for. So before they travel, they were always wanting to know, what is the wind direction and strength? What are the visibility factors, especially fog, blowing snow, and flat light were huge concerns for travel. What was the snowfall intensity and amount? Temperature is important. People check it, but it's not a driving factor in whether or not they go out. They know it's cold. They're always prepared for that. It's more, what is this aspect of wind, visibility, and snow? On the water, they're looking at wave height and direction, tide timing, and areas of strong currents. Those are a factor for boating, but also for sea ice in the winter. Now it's not moving forward. Really hard? Okay. So the next ones are sea ice conditions, where sea ice thickness, position of the flow edge, do you want to try it? Location and size of leads and polynyas, and river and lake ice thickness were most important. That's the end of the presentation. Thank you. And for other conditions, people are really looking at trail conditions, understanding what those trail conditions are like, what the number of daylight hours are, and what the moon stage is, because that really affects the currents, which really affects ice thickness conditions and movement as well. Okay, so this is the next slide after what I just spoke about. We really wanted to understand, how are people accessing the information that they want to use when planning a trip. So you can see here in the blue are services provided by polar service providers. So these are products and services. Weather forecasts, marine forecasts are very important. These are available online. But the majority of sources that people are consulting before travel that you see there are community sources. So this is really from people's own observations and experience, or reaching out to others in the community who have recently traveled to an area of interest and getting feedback from them. What's it like? What's the weather like? What are the winds doing? What's the ice doing? So this is important to highlight, that improving products is critical, will provide important information, but that community side is really, really important, and that communication and understanding experiences are critical in decision-making locally. So with some of these delays, I have to rush through this, but so there's a whole range of responses for why information was identified as difficult to access in these Nunavut communities. Two main ones we've heard a lot already in the shipping context as well is slow internet, very slow, limited bandwidth across Nunavut. The cost there is not really related to the cost of the products, but the cost of internet and the cost of the amount of data that you can use. So an example of that is from Arviat, Nunavut, on the west coast of Hudson Bay. You can see at the bottom there, that is the extent of cell coverage around each community. Arviat is the furthest south. There's other communities along the coast there. Whereas on the right in the map there, you see that people travel upwards of 400 kilometers away from the community. So once you're beyond one of those little grid cells basically around a community, you're outside of cell range. So then people are relying on VHF radios to communicate, or satellite phones to call back to town to ask for advice, or to call out on the land and ask people what are the conditions, what's happening where you are. So other reasons why information is difficult to access is related to just the kinds of information that are provided and the times of year. So not maybe being at the right season or not updated often enough, or it's only provided at certain times of day, week, or month. So I will move forward on this one, but just this is highlighting that in Pond Inlet, for example, they're checking all sorts of information to make decisions. You see there a beautiful, boating opportunity, calm in Pond Inlet, but 2 days later, it was already freezing over and very difficult to get around by those small boats. And in the background there are ships that are shipping to a nearby mine. And the ice services are really targeted to shipping seasons and not so much to the sea ice seasons when people are traveling by snowmobile on the ice. So you've already seen these key messages from our project, really wanting to have more real-time information, more information where people travel, not just at the weather station in the community, and really wanting to connect with service providers to share these ideas and to come up with really creative ways to address community needs. So thank you for your patience and thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Gita. I think you're one of the coolest persons under the circumstances, right? Just continuing, and I think it's often that when you have no visuals that the story comes across directly, even. So I think there's no harm done there. Maybe we have time for one or two questions. Yeah.
I was wondering how popular the Siku app was in getting the information for weather there.
I can repeat it. The question was how popular is the Siku app in getting information? The Arctic Eider Society has developed this Siku app, which is a social media network essentially focused on Indigenous knowledge. They are a partner on our project, but we don't have any influence in Siku itself. But it is very popular. It's a way to share observations online, to highlight warnings like it's really dangerous here, be careful, or avoid this area. It's becoming more and more popular. And you heard about Smart Ice this morning. Smart Ice shares their sea ice thickness information on Siku. So it's becoming more and more communities are interested, and so then they're sharing their own observations there, and then it's more accessible all across the north.